and welcome to Arbitral Insights, a podcast series brought to you by our international arbitration practice lawyers here at Reed Smith. I'm Peter Rosher, Global Head of Reed Smith's International Arbitration Practice. I hope you enjoy the industry commentary, insights and anecdotes we share with you in the course of this series, wherever in the world you are. If you have any questions about any of the topics discussed, please do contact our speakers. And with that, let's get started.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the first of our Reed Smith podcasts to celebrate South Asian Heritage Month 2025. This year, the theme of South Asian Heritage Month is Roots for Roots, and I'm delighted to say that for this episode, I've got three of my very dear colleagues at Reed Smith as our guests. I'm going to briefly introduce them to you, and then by the end of this podcast, once you've heard them speak to the questions I will be putting to them, you'll realize what fabulous people they are, let alone what brilliant lawyers they are. So first of all, I will introduce Mahmuda Kamalee. Mahmuda is a newly qualified associate in the Global Commercial Disputes Group in London, and she is doing a broad range of work in a number of areas in that practice. Secondly, I will introduce Akshay Sevak, who is another associate in the Global Commercial Disputes Group in London. He too does a broad mix of work, and he is, at the time that we're doing this podcast, is halfway through his Higher Rights of Audience course. So by the time this podcast goes out, I'm sure he'll have a further set of titles to put after his email block when he sends you all emails. Last and definitely not least is my partner, Ravi Pattani, who is a partner in our corporate group, doing a broad mix of corporate transactional work, and is definitely one of the future leaders of that corporate practice. So delighted to see you all and have you all here. I'm looking forward to our discussion, and I don't want any of you to hold back. Okay, so I want you just to let it flow and tell me exactly what you think about the questions I'm going to ask you, because you are some of the shining lights in our practice of South Asian heritage. So let me go straight into it and ask the first question. And I'm going to ask each of you this question. I'm not going to ask you all the same questions, but I'm going to ask you all a few of the same questions. The first thing I think is always interesting, because I know I've been asked this question so many times in the course of my career so far. Why did you choose law as a career? So maybe I start off with Mahmuda on that, please.
Thank you, Gautam, for the lovely introduction. And I'm really pleased to be here with you all today. If I'm very honest, I can't actually remember a particular reason as to why I chose a legal career. And I know as a lawyer, we can shy away from saying that because there should be multiple reasons why we chose it. But I think my earliest memory of wanting to become a lawyer was when I was around 14 or 15 years old. And I recall we had a careers day at school where we were learning of the different roles and jobs in society that we could take on. And I was introduced to the idea of a judge, a solicitor and a barrister. And I just remember leaving curious as to what their roles were and the way in which their roles enabled them to achieve justice in different respects. And then from there on, I decided to research as I grew older into different work experience opportunities at law firms. I attended legal clinics and I attended other events for other jobs to see whether sort of my curiosity in law was shifted at all. And I'm really pleased today to say it wasn't. And all of these experiences enabled me to see how impactful legal work can be, both in a courtroom but also in everyday lives. So this continued to reaffirm my interest in the field. If I look at it from a more academic perspective, I've always been interested in analytical thinking and subjects which emphasize written skills. So naturally, law stood out to me as a discipline which combined these elements. And I particularly enjoyed doing a law degree. And like I said, the analytical thinking and the emphasis on written skills was the motivation behind choosing to study law at undergraduate level. And then I proceeded to seek a training contract at Reed Smith, which I was very lucky to get. And now here I am today as part of your wonderful team, having the opportunity to work with yourself.
Well, thank you, Mahmuda. Well, I can certainly say that I've been a witness to your analytical skills and your drafting skills. So I'm very glad you made that choice, and I'm very glad that your curiosity was really sort of brought about because we've got you. So thank you. So let me ask that same question to you, Akshay, please.
Thanks, Gautam, and thanks for having me on this podcast. I don't mean it in any small way when I say it's a real honor, and it's a real privilege to be able to share the stage with yourself, Mahmuda and Ravi. So I think my reasons were a lot less structured than Mahmuda's. I grew up in Kenya, and my plan, to be honest, when I was 16 was, when I look back at it, I was very much trying to become a professional pianist. I was going to go to music school. And then I decided when I was 16 that I didn't have the maturity to understand music in the way that you needed to do that. That is certainly not at that age. And I thought, well, what else do I like doing? And I like talking, which is why I'm here. I liked the analytical subjects like history, English. I liked physics and maths quite a lot, the detail in that. And someone said, well, why don't you consider studying law? And I thought, well, I am coming from abroad. I probably should do something relatively rigorous to justify the endeavor to my family. So I came to law school, and I was so great because everyone was so smart. The work was really difficult. It was really interesting, and I just didn't appreciate until I started studying it that you really can sort of grasp and really grapple with so many different facets of life through this one medium. So when I was at law school, similar to Mahmuda, I applied for vacation schemes and training contracts. I was so fortunate to land one at Reed Smith. And even to be honest, as my training contract completed, I really did think that it was time now to go back home. And there was no intention to stay on. And so when the department I'm now in, Gautam, your team, the Global Commercial Disputes team, offered me a job to stay on, it was just very, very good luck. And so here I am now.
Well, thank you, Akshay. And I mean, I know you still play the piano very well, but I'm also very glad that you chose law over the piano, and I'm also glad that you made London your home. So that's very good. Thank you. Okay, last but not least, I'd like to ask you, Ravi, the same question. So what brought you into the law in the first place?
Thanks, Gautam, and good to be here. I wish I could say that I was like Mahmuda or Akshay and really thought about the career choice I was going to make and thought about my skill set and how that would complement the law. But I was probably about 12 or 13 watching TV and seeing all these high-powered lawyers and suits in fancy offices in fancy cities around the world, and thought, oh, that sounds like fun. And I kind of just stuck to it and had no imagination to go for anything different to what I thought I wanted to do back when I was a 12-year-old watching TV. Despite, I come from a South Asian heritage like all of us here, and despite the kind of regular view of your parents want you to be a lawyer or a doctor, my parents were very much against me being a lawyer and wanted me to be either a doctor, a dentist, a pharmacist, anything in the sciences. And so actually when they said, no, don't do law, it was actually almost like a weird rebellion. Given that it's law, it's quite a sensible rebellion, but it was a slight rebellion. And so I kind of just wanted to get into the career. And like Mahmuda and Akshay, I did study law as an undergraduate. I actually didn't enjoy the undergraduate degree, so much so that I kind of didn't really put a lot of effort into thinking about my career and applying for roles and doing the vacation schemes. But thankfully, I had really good friends around me who encouraged me to apply for a vacation scheme. I applied to Reed Smith, and the rest, as they say, is history.
Well, I am very grateful to those friends of yours who gave you that nudge, Ravi, because in life, we all need a nudge now and again, right? Since we all share that South Asian heritage, as you said, it is interesting that point you made about how, we study things, but there's a sort of a perception of what we might want to do, what people think we ought to do. And so just finding our own way is so important. And I want to pick up on that theme with you all, actually, and ask you the next question. And this, again, is going to be directed to all of you. What's the best bit of advice that someone has given you so far in the course of your career? Is there something you can particularly remember that made a real impact on you, that's helped you and guided you to drive forward in what you do? And maybe I can start with Akshay on that one first, please.
Thanks, Gautam. I think So not to embarrass you, but I think you've definitely given me quite a lot of very useful and great advice in my career. I think some of the most useful things that I've really, really held on to when we've spoken has been that you've got to keep things simple. There is no monopoly on wisdom, and those two things have been real confidence boosters to feel for me to feel like I can back myself with ideas, with also with trying out different things. I think the advice I got from my parents and from my grandfather was, in turn, just take it a step at a time, which is probably an iteration of keeping it simple as well. But I just didn't appreciate how profound that was at the time. And from my granddad, just always be bold. And perhaps we will touch on this later, but I don't know any quote unquote relaxed or timid South Asian people, certainly not in my family. And I found that skill to be incredibly useful in a career in the law, perhaps in litigation as well.
Yeah, very true. I think, I mean, having that ability to stand up to things, clearly is very valuable. Well, look, thank you, Akshay. Why don't I turn next to Ravi? If you can perhaps share with our listeners something about some of the advice you've got and why it made an impact on you.
I think for me, it was your opinion matters. Your opinion is valid. Like a lot of people, I think I have suffered and do suffer from imposter syndrome. You enter this big city law firm, and especially when I joined, thankfully it's improving and has been improving, I'm sure, since your time, Gautam. But there wasn't a lot of people who looked like me, not necessarily even at my level, but in kind of in the senior roles. And you start to think, oh, should I be bringing this viewpoint into this conversation? Should I be raising my opinion? And having not really worked in a city environment or an office environment, I was kind of nervous or skeptical about doing that. And I remember someone saying to me, no, your opinion is valid, your opinion is important, and you need to raise it. And I'm not saying that it was an overnight journey for me. It took me a while to feel comfortable to do that. But it was the thing that I think really helped propel my career, that I felt empowered to join conversations with senior stakeholders, with clients, and not be worried about expressing a view, expressing an opinion, even if it was counter to the senior partners I was working with, because sometimes my viewpoint made them think of things in a different way and helped our client achieve the results that they were looking for. So that for me was a real big one. And it's something that I still sometimes struggle with today and I'm still working on, but it's also the one that I hope that I will be able to impart on other people, that no matter where you come from, no matter what kind of level you are or what stage you are in your career, speak up and in a respectful way, make sure your voice is heard, and it can make a big difference even at a very junior level.
Thanks, Ravi. I that I couldn't agree more, and I think that's really an impactful thing. And keep please expressing your views, keep speaking up, because it's really important. It's so valuable when people share their inputs and thoughts. And as Akshay said, there is no monopoly on wisdom, and we are all better for sharing thoughts, for ensuring that everyone has a say, because no one can say, I've got the right answer on everything. And people see things in different ways. I know I learn every day from people I work with, my great colleagues I work with. I learn every day. The day I stop learning is when I'm going to hang up my legal boots, because we've got to keep learning. So, no, thank you, Ravi. Thank you, Akshay, so far for that. Let me turn to you, Mahmuda, and ask you the same question about some of the best advice you've got and why it's had an impact on you.
Thanks, Gautam, and thanks for Ravi and Akshay for sharing your advice as well, which I think was really empowering. I can resonate with Ravi on the imposter syndrome. As a South Asian Muslim woman who looks different from the general crowd, I must admit I do suffer from heightened imposter syndrome. And I'm not sure if the person on this call remembers what they said to me, but Gautam interviewed me in 2018 when I had just finished my first year of my law degree, and he was interviewing me for the placement year, which Reed Smith did in collaboration with my university, Queen Mary. And I remember finishing the interview and I was an absolute wreck. I might have not shown it at the time, but I was so nervous. I was thinking, why would they choose me? Someone who looks different, might speak different, and doesn't have the sort of traditional backing to becoming a successful lawyer. What I thought was necessary to become a successful lawyer. And I remember leaving Gautam in the lift. I was heading down to leave the building and he was heading back to the floor. And what he said to me was, "You are a butterfly whose wings are learning to fly. Do not allow anyone to clip them, and do not allow yourself to clip them." And while it might not be traditionally a piece of advice, I just remember that statement sticking with me to the point that now, like 7 years later, I still remember that. And I left feeling that day that no matter what the outcome is of that interview, I won't allow anyone to clip my wings. Whether they see my worth now, they may see it later. And that really stuck with me. And it allowed me to manage my imposter syndrome so much more better, because that serves as a reminder to all of us that actually sometimes we might be our biggest critic. Other people might see our worth, but because we're overthinking so much, we end up sort of making the situation far worse than it is. And that could mean that we lose out on opportunities. So thank you, Gautam, for that, for saying that to me back then in 2018. Yeah, first year law student Mahmuda really appreciates it. And actually NQ Mahmuda appreciates it even more now, because I thought life was hard back then, but actually it just gets tougher. But it's thanks to seniors like yourself who have enabled us and empowered us to continue.
Well, that's very kind of you. But I mean, the real superstar of that whole event was you. And, it shows, right? Look where you are today. Just look at you now. And that's the wonderful thing. And I tell you, just going off piste for a while to share with the three of you and our listeners, one of the great things that I look back on, I've been in practice now for almost 35 years. And one of the great things that I love to see is to see young talent blossom. And I've seen many a nervous person like you, Mahmuda, who, and you were really, really good. I still remember that interview, by the way. And I still remember our conversation, just for the record. I just love seeing people do well. And I think the role of more senior people is to enable that and empower that and make sure that lawyers like you, Akshay and Ravi, don't just equal people like me, but you surpass me, because that's what passing the baton is all about. And that gives me a lot of satisfaction and happiness. So, no, I love it. I mean, look, I think the world of all three of you, and it's evident from the first bit of this podcast just how brilliant you are anyway. So our listeners will work that out for themselves. I should avoid more commentary. But, let me ask you this. I was going to ask you a bit about why Ravi chose corporate and why you, Akshay, and Mahmuda chose disputes. But I think we've really learned so much about you anyway in the course of our first part of our discussion. But I want to ask you this, if I may. And this is all about heritage, right? We're doing this podcast about South Asian Heritage Month. And of course, Ravi's a great corporate lawyer. Akshay and Mahmuda, you do disputes work, litigation, arbitration, investigations, etc. But one of the things that we all know is that our heritage is really important. And there are many more people who will come after us and who will do well and who will look to us and think, yeah, well, if they can do it, I can as well. Heritage has many aspects to it. But I wonder, given the whole subject of heritage, I wonder if I could ask you to say what heritage means to you and why it empowers you. And actually, I think this is a question that's worth asking of all of you because we're moving on the questions. But I think, why don't I go to Ravi first on that? Why is heritage so important to you, and how does it empower you and make you better at what you do every day in your practice?
I think for me, heritage is not just about the people who are coming next, it's about the people who have come before me, who've kind of fought the fight, trod on that path, not just in the legal career, but I look personally at my family. They, like many South Asian Gujaratis, my family came via Uganda. So they were there in the 1970s and then moved over here. And, they had a very settled, happy life back in Uganda. They were uprooted and moved to the UK in the 70s and rebuilt their lives. And for them, it was about making their next generation's lives better the focus on education, the focus on career and building a comfortable lives for yourselves. And I've been very grateful for my family for putting those kind of values in me, instilling those values in me. And that's what kind of helped drive me to where I am now. And I also, and that's kind of the more serious point of it, but also I grew up in a nice, bustling, big Asian family with people in and out of our house every day. And we had to learn to, one, multitask and balance our work with hosting people in the home and also making conversations with people that I'd never met before. And all of these kind of life skills, which at the time you don't really appreciate how important they're going to be. And all of those things have been so valuable for me in my career. So as a corporate lawyer, we are working on multiple deals at one time. We have to be able to balance our work. We have to be able to balance our work and our lives. We have to be able to balance the various different competing tasks for clients. And all those skills, which I didn't really appreciate or kind of hadn't understood I was learning, have come to the fore. My ability to make conversation with anyone. I mean, I think all of you will be testament to this. I can pretty much talk to anyone at any time, and I will talk to anyone at any time. And that all comes from the roots that I've been given, my heritage. And that's hopefully helped me to kind of make those connections with my colleagues, with my friends in the firm, but also with clients. And that's hopefully going to be the route for me to continue to build my practice and to demonstrate that actually all those things that you take for granted as a young child, or the things that you think of as challenges and that are different to other people who are growing up around you, are really valuable things, and they are the things that set you apart, and they are the things that will help you identify skills in yourself that you didn't even realize that you had.
Thank you, Ravi. That was fabulous. Can I ask Akshay to share your thoughts, please?
Thanks, Gautam. Yeah, no, thanks, Ravi. Really, thank you so much for sharing. Ravi and I have something in common in that we're both Gujaratis, and we both have family who came from Uganda. And what I thought was really interesting from the answer Ravi gave is that he said his family were uprooted from Uganda. They had a comfortable life and then they rebuilt here. But he doesn't use the word that was used to describe them at the time, which is refugee. And I think that's quite telling, and I think it leads into my answer, because I think that there are so many. It would have been so easy for people coming over then to let their circumstance better them, and I think that permeates the language we talk about it today. And we speak now about how everyone of the South Asian heritage and other heritage as well, to be honest, have come here and rebuilt their lives and made something for themselves. And I think that just taking a moment to pause and recognize how significant an endeavor that was, for me, is an empowering act in and of itself. It says to me, certainly, that you are from stock that is very well tested. And, you've got it in you to really go the distance if you want to, and if you put your mind to it, because others before you have done that and much, much, much more. So I think that for me, heritage means honoring those who've come before, really just recognizing the awesome power and grandeur of what they, in relatively or seemingly normal lives, how they have achieved the extraordinary. And I think heritage also means to me recognizing how beautiful it is to have something which is slightly different about you. What a privilege. We all get 24 hours a day and a set number of years on the clock, which you can't change. And you get yours added with extra masala and spice, as well as everything else that you gain in this country. I mean, it's an extraordinary privilege. So I think for me, I just wouldn't feel life for me just wouldn't be as fun if I didn't have a recognition of that heritage. And I think that if I'm doing anything right, then it's by standing on the shoulders of very, very many people in my community and in my family. And hopefully someone will be able to stand on mine too.
Fabulous. Thank you, Akshay. I'll save some thoughts until after I've heard Mahmuda, because what you've both said so far really resonates with me too. Mahmuda, share your thoughts, please, on that.
Well, firstly, I want to say, actually, you said masala and spice, and all I could think of was karak chai. And I wish we had some right with us now.
Well, as if by magic, I'll get some to you, don't worry.
That would be amazing. But I think, for me, Akshay hit it right on the head. our heritage and being different is a strength, and it brings a different level of fun to our lives, if I can call it fun. For me, being different is a strength. For those who know me, the first thing I always say to everyone, well, the first thing my family introduced me to everyone is by saying I'm a lawyer. But for myself, it's always saying, hi, I'm a British Bangladeshi Muslim. And I take a lot of pride in stating that and stating that I'm different. And it's not always been the case. However, I can say that it's now a core part of who I am. And without my heritage, I can't even imagine who I would be or the life that I would have. For some context, my mother came to this country when she was about 14 years old from Bangladesh. And I'll use a lovely term that Ravi said, uprooted from Bangladesh to start a new life here. And whilst they came for a better life, it wasn't always so easy. And my maternal grandfather, who is still around and who I'm so grateful for, he always shares the stories with us of how he had to come to this country first to establish himself before bringing over his wife and his kids, and how that distance just reminds him of how important family is. And the fact that if he hadn't maintained that distance and tried to establish his life here, first of all, my mother wouldn't have come here. And if she didn't come here, I wouldn't be here and have the journey that I've had to date. So I think my heritage is really important to me. It's a reminder of not only the impact that I will have going forward, but also a reminder that I should be grateful for those who came before me and what they've done for us. My heritage has shaped my professional life in multiple ways. And I guess the key skills and values that I've learned from being a South Asian woman is values like community. Like Ravi said, the house was hustling and bustling with guests at any hour, lots of food to go around the table and lots of conversations. So communication was one of the key skills that I picked up on. Also, I learned empathy, emotional intelligence, which I think we might not know as a key skill and value that a lawyer should have, but I think it's enabled me to better understand my clients, to think about the emotions that a client goes through, that a firm goes through when we're strategizing as to how to help them best. And like I mentioned, my grandfather came, he uprooted himself to this country, and he spent a good few years without his family, without having much contact with them, and without having much resource to build a life for them. He taught me perseverance and resilience. And those are two attributes that I hold very closely to myself. And I think without that, I wouldn't be the lawyer that I am. So my heritage, my upbringing have allowed me to appreciate that difference is not always negative. And I've got a deep appreciation. And I'm really proud of being different, whether this is my language, my religion, my way of living, or even the way I dress. I take pride in being different. And I think it helps me to stick out in the crowd in a positive way.
You know, you three are just sensational. Thank you, Mahmuda. You've said so many brilliant things, and I know that our listeners will resonate because these are your personal stories. And they also hit very much the roots to roots theme of this year's South Asian Heritage Month. And everything you've said just really resonates with me so hard because, my parents came to this country. It was the first time they'd ever been abroad, right? They came to this country and they enabled my sister and me to have opportunities. And I will always be eternally grateful to my late parents for that. And the routes that they took to come here and lay down roots meant that they were very keen for us, even though we were outsiders. And we will always, unfortunately, some people will always regard us as outsiders. We were able to lay down roots, integrate, and learn all those lessons that all three of you rather have so eloquently spoken to. And the fact is, all four of us speak more than one language, right? Now, very few people would be able to be brought up bilingual or trilingual, or even speak more languages than that. But we're all able to say that we have had that privilege, and we do have that privilege, and different is good. And that's a theme of what you've all said. And I think that is, for me, that really summarizes so much of what we're talking about. So thank you so much for your fabulous, candid thoughts, thoughtful points you've all made about it. And, very fitting that we talk about all of this as we celebrate South Asian Heritage Month. So I'm very grateful to you all. We're now approaching the end of our podcast, but for those of our listeners who have heard podcasts that I've done before, I always like to end our podcasts with some more light-hearted conversation, totally unrelated to the subject matter of the actual podcast. And this one is no different. So I'm going to ask each of you a separate question and love your thoughts. I'm going to start with Mahmuda first, because I know, apart from your incredible prowess as a lawyer and your effervescent nature, you're also a real foodie. So tell us what food means to you and what sorts of food we're talking about.
Thanks, Gautam. If there's one thing I can say about food, if I'm equally passionate about something as much as I am about law, it's food. And not just because of the fact that I just really enjoy eating. I think food, especially in our shared heritage of being South Asian, I saw food as a way of bringing people together. I saw food as a way of showing affection, showing appreciation, and food was a way that I regarded my mother's efforts. She might say that she couldn't do much for us, and she says that often. She wasn't educated to the level that we all have been privileged to be educated at. And the one thing I say to her was, you provided us with food, and food is the fuel for everything and anything. And without that delicious food, I wouldn't be the strong woman that I am today. So that's that side of it. But aside from that, I have to say I've always been conflicted between what my favorite food is. The British side of me always says, well, it has to be a good roast dinner. Like, that's my absolute favorite. And when Christmas time comes and we have all of these lunches and dinners at work, I'm just so looking forward to the roast dinner. But I've got to give it to my heritage. Nothing beats South Asian food. And we're all going to be biased on this call. Nothing beats it. For me, it's a good biryani. Just the layers, the sauces, like Akshay said, the spices, the masala. Nothing tingles my taste buds more than a biryani. And just to put it out there, if anyone wants to bribe me with something, it's going to be that biryani, because I can't say no to that biryani. So I'll work late all night for you. Just give me a biryani.
You shouldn't have said that now, because now everyone's going to be getting you biryanis every day of the week. But no, thank you.
I don't mind.
All
I don't mind at all.
Yeah. No, I love it. I love it. I love it. Thank you. I'm going to turn to Ravi next, if I may, and we'll close out with Akshay. I want to ask you a different question, Ravi. Is there a particular sort of music you like, and do you have a favorite album?
I have a very eclectic musical taste, so I will like everything from, the cheesy pop top 40 to a bit of indie rock to obviously some Bollywood and a bit of Bhangra. But I'd say like my go-to comfort music goes back to the noughties garage R&B scene, which will always be kind of my go-to music. I recently went back to Leicester, where I grew up, and Craig David was performing, and it reminded me of so many youthful nights out and enjoying a lot of time with my friends and family at the time. And so going to my favourite album, I feel like Craig David's first album, Born to Do It, was just such a pivotal kind of time in my life. And that album will always be one that's close to my heart, and I'll always remember, and I will always dance along to and sing along to. But I hate karaoke, so you'll never hear me. It's just in the shower for me.
Well, next time I get you in the karaoke, I'm going to ask them to do either Rewind or 7 Days, or I might even find another track. There's a few tracks by Craig David from his early days, which I'm sure you can do really well. But look, thank you for that, Ravi. It's a great one. I love it. I love it. I've learned something new about you now from that. That's brilliant. Right. Now, last and definitely not least, Akshay, I'm going to ask you this question. Leaving aside the UK, have you got a favorite holiday destination that you just love going to? Or, and I'll give you a choice, or that you've not yet been to, but you'd love to go to?
Sure, it's a tough one. It's definitely a tough one. I'd be remiss without mentioning Kenya. I know it's not a holiday destination because I grew up there, but it really is God's own country. It's not in Yorkshire. It really is in Kenya. But I think the best travel destination I visited by a country mile has to be Sri Lanka. It was such a beautiful island, and I think it's a fascinating combination of the Buddhist culture, the Hindu culture in the north. It's an island that's small enough that you can go around the entire thing multiple times if you wanted to. The transport's great. The people are so friendly. It's beautiful. I visited after I qualified as a lawyer, and I spent just under a month traveling around there. And after a while, I must have been coming across as a little too comfortable, because people started assuming that I was Sri Lankan, which I exploited, that's for sure. And then one day, someone pulled up on the road and asked me in Sinhala for instructions. And I just pointed straight and they just said, nice one, and continued on. And that's when I knew that I'm going to have to come back here either to apologize to this person or to see other parts of this wonderful country. So to anyone listening to this, Sri Lanka, if you haven't been, make sure you go.
Brilliant. Thank you. I'm sure it was the right direction, by the way. Well, listen, thank you very much. That brings us to the end of our podcast. I'm very grateful to you all. So thank you, Mahmuda. Thank you, Akshay. Thank you, Ravi, for not just sharing your thoughts today and being so fun and candid, but also being so thoughtful about all of the issues we've spoken about, and particularly on heritage. And a big thank you for being such great colleagues. The one thing about working in a law firm and the practice of law is it's hugely assisted by having brilliant colleagues to work with, and having people like you and seeing people like you do well and blossom and flourish makes me really happy. So thank you all very much. And I look forward to seeing you all very, very soon.
Arbitral Insights is a Reed Smith production. Our producer is Ali McCardle. For more information about Reed Smith's global international arbitration practice, email arbitralinsights@reedsmith.com. To learn about the Reed Smith Arbitration Pricing Calculator, a first-of-its-kind mobile app that forecasts the costs of arbitration around the world, search Arbitration Pricing Calculator on reedsmith.com or download for free through the Apple and Google Play app stores. You can find our podcast on Spotify, Apple, Google Play, Stitcher, reedsmith.com, and our social media accounts at Reedsmith LLP on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Twitter. This podcast is provided for educational purposes. It does not constitute legal advice and is not intended to establish an attorney-client relationship, nor is it intended to suggest or establish standards of care applicable to particular lawyers in any given situation. Prior results do not guarantee a similar outcome. Any views, opinions, or comments made by any external guest speaker are not to be attributed to Reed Smith LLP or its individual lawyers. All rights reserved.